The wine glass slipped from my fingers the moment I heard her laugh. Not the sweet, carefree laugh I married her for 13 years ago, no. This was a high-pitched, flirtatious little giggle that scraped the inside of my skull like nails across a chalkboard. My heart didn't break. It detonated. I stood frozen by the entrance to the private dining room, the air thick with roasted garlic and betrayal. Candles flickered over our anniversary table, the one I had booked 3 months ago to surprise her. Dozens of tiny, thoughtful details, the handwritten card, the special bottle of Chianti from our honeymoon in Tuscany, were laid out like a shrine to a marriage that, it seemed, had already been buried. She didn't know I was standing there yet. She was busy leaning toward the young waiter, twirling her hair around her finger, her voice low and sultry. I wasn't supposed to hear it. God knows she would have played her innocent act if she knew I was close enough. But I was close. Too close. "I'll be back tomorrow," she whispered, her lipstick leaving a faint smudge on the wine glass she cradled in her hand. "Gotta celebrate properly with my real man this time." The words sliced through me like a blade wrapped in velvet. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just watched. Her eyes sparkled, not for me, but for the fantasy of another man she couldn't even bother to keep secret anymore. 13 years of birthdays, anniversaries, lazy Sunday mornings, and whispered promises, all stripped to the bone by a woman who had no idea her husband was watching her sell off the last pieces of their life together for cheap attention from some other guy. The waiter, awkward and flustered, laughed nervously. He didn't know what to say. He glanced toward the kitchen like he wanted to run. I don't blame him. Hell, I wanted to run too. Run from the bitter taste rising in my throat, from the searing humiliation blistering my skin. But I didn't. I stood there, gripping the edge of the wall until my knuckles burned white, letting the whole scene carve itself into my memory, every ugly second of it. When she finally looked up and spotted me, her smile faltered for half a second. Just half. Then she masked it with that same practiced, plastic grin she probably used with him, too. "Hey, baby," she sang, like nothing was wrong. Like I hadn't just heard her rip my heart out and toss it onto the floor in front of the waitstaff. I forced a smile so brittle it could have shattered on the floor next to the glass. "Sorry I'm late," I said, and I sat down across from her. It was a performance now, a sick little play, and I was done being the fool who didn't know the lines. I ordered another bottle of wine, something expensive, something that would sting her wallet when the check came around. And while she chattered about meaningless crap, the weather, work gossip, fake laughter filling the spaces where love used to live, I watched her. I watched the way she crossed and uncrossed her legs, the way she adjusted her dress a little too often, the way she texted under the table with the subtlety of a child caught sneaking candy. She thought she was clever. She thought I was stupid. And maybe I had been. For too long. But not tonight. Tonight, I let her talk. Tonight, I nodded and laughed at all the right moments. Tonight, I let her believe she had gotten away with it. Because tomorrow, her whole world was going to burn to the ground. When dessert came, a small tiramisu with "Happy Anniversary" scrawled in chocolate sauce, I asked the waiter for a moment alone with her. He practically sprinted away, probably grateful to escape the slow, simmering hell he had stumbled into. I lifted my fork, scooped a bit of the dessert, and took a bite. It tasted like ashes. "You know," I said casually, swirling the wine in my glass, "I've been thinking about making some changes." Her eyes lit up, too eagerly. "Changes? Like what?" I leaned in, lowering my voice like I was sharing a secret. "Like, finding someone who actually wants to spend anniversaries with me." Her face froze. For the first time all night, her mask slipped, and I caught a glimpse of the real her, the cold, calculating woman who thought she had me wrapped around her perfectly manicured finger. I pushed my chair back slowly, feeling lighter than I had in months. "I'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening," I said, tossing a folded piece of paper onto the table. Her fingers snatched it up. At first, she thought it was the bill. It wasn't. It was the eviction notice. Her name. Our address. The official move-out deadline. All there in black and white, just as official as her betrayal. I didn't stay to watch her face fall. I didn't need to. The stunned, guttural sound she made as I turned my back on her was enough. Tonight, she could pick up the check. Tomorrow, she could start picking up the pieces. And I had just started writing the ending she never saw coming. I didn't drive home after I left the restaurant. Hell, I didn't even know where I was driving at first. My hands moved on the wheel like they had a mind of their own, guiding me through the empty streets under a black sky that felt heavier than the whole world pressing down on my chest. Streetlights blurred past in smears of yellow and white, and the city felt colder than it ever had before. I rolled the window down and let the chill slap me awake, needing anything to cut through the numbness crawling up my spine. The betrayal wasn't what hit the hardest. It was the disrespect. The smug, casual way she had treated me like a backup plan, a wallet with legs, a doormat she could wipe her dirty little secrets on without a second thought. And she had thought she was getting away with it. I pulled into an all-night diner, a rundown, flickering neon joint on the edge of town. I wasn't hungry, but I needed a place to sit where the walls didn't smell like her perfume and the floor didn't creak with old memories. I slid into a booth in the corner, ordered a black coffee from a tired-looking waitress, and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up with her name immediately. 8 missed calls. 3 frantic texts. Where are you? You left me here alone. This isn't funny, Jack. Funny. She thought I was joking. As if this was just another petty argument she could steamroll with crocodile tears and gaslighting. Not tonight. I stared at her messages for a long time, my thumb hovering over the reply button. But I didn't respond. Not yet. She didn't deserve even a scrap of my attention right now. She didn't deserve the satisfaction of thinking I cared enough to fight with her. Instead, I opened a different app, one I hadn't touched in over a year. One my lawyer had suggested, just in case. It was all there, waiting, drafted papers, detailed instructions, emergency contacts. With one click, I started the avalanche rolling. The eviction notice she found tonight was just the start. The real fireworks were going to hit tomorrow when she realized her access to everything, credit cards, joint accounts, her fancy new car, the spa membership she used to relax after work, was about to disappear like smoke through her greedy fingers. I sipped the bitter coffee and stared out the window into the parking lot. 2 teenagers argued near a broken-down pickup truck. A stray cat darted between dumpsters. Somewhere, normal life kept ticking on, indifferent to the personal apocalypse unfolding in my chest. Good. The world shouldn't stop for her. And neither would I. By the time the coffee was gone and the night had thickened into the heavy silence before dawn, my plan was in motion. I wasn't going to lash out. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to destroy her life with the same quiet, ruthless efficiency she had destroyed our marriage. One careful step at a time. First, the accounts were being frozen, scheduled to lock at 8 a.m. sharp. Second, the utilities were being transferred into her name alone. Third, my lawyer would file for divorce before noon, citing infidelity with documented evidence that would shred any pathetic alimony dreams she had been entertaining with her so-called real man. And the cherry on top? Tomorrow morning, while she was trying to figure out why her credit cards were being declined at whatever hotel she thought she could crawl into, a moving company would arrive at our house. My house. They'd change the locks, pack her designer shoes and useless Instagram-worthy crap into neat little boxes, and leave them stacked neatly on the curb like yesterday's garbage. All legal. All airtight. All irreversible. She had made her move. Now it was my turn. A grim sort of calm settled over me as I watched the first bruised light of dawn leak across the sky. No rage. No tears. Just the cold, electric hum of clarity. She wasn't the woman I had married. Maybe she never had been. And me? I wasn't the man she thought she could destroy. The phone buzzed again. Another text. Another desperate plea. Jack, please. I can explain. Explain? There was no explanation. No apology. No fixing it. She didn't understand yet. But she would. And by the time she did, it would be far too late. I dropped a few crumpled bills on the table and stood up, shoving my hands into my jacket pockets as I stepped back into the icy morning air. Tonight, I had lost something. Tomorrow, I was going to take everything back, piece by piece. And I wasn't leaving her a damn thing but ashes. I didn't go home. Home didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene, silent, poisoned, still wearing the fingerprints of her betrayal on every wall. Instead, I pulled into the first hotel I found off the highway, a dingy little place with flickering fluorescent lights and a cracked ice machine humming mournfully in the corner. It was perfect. Anonymous. Temporary. Cold. I paid cash at the front desk. No record she could trace. No trail she could follow if she decided to swing her drama into high gear. The room smelled like old cigarettes and cheap cleaner. The mattress sagged like it had given up years ago. But I didn't care. I threw my jacket on the single chair in the corner, sat heavily on the edge of the bed, and just sat there, staring, breathing, trying to feel something besides the gnawing, hollow rage twisting inside my ribs. The clock ticked, each second louder than the last. The room was suffocating. I needed to move. I yanked out my laptop, logged into the bank accounts, and methodically started the shutdown. Checking account, frozen. Savings, locked. Credit cards, canceled. Emergency cash transfer, completed, moved into a private account under my name only. It was almost hypnotic, the mechanical rhythm of it. Click. Freeze. Confirm. Each button pressed was another brick in the wall I was building between myself and her. Each frozen dollar was another door slamming shut in her face. I imagined her waking up in our king-sized bed, stretching lazily like a cat, reaching for her phone, and finding out the lifeline she had taken for granted was snapped, cut, gone. I imagined the growing panic as she tried card after card, transaction after transaction, all coming back declined. I imagined the furious, wounded text she would fire off when she realized she wasn't in control anymore. It gave me a dark satisfaction. When I was finished, I opened a private message board. A quiet, clean place where lawyers posted advice. I didn't want public revenge. I didn't want a viral sob story. I wanted results. Real, legal, devastating results. The lawyer I'd been quietly consulting for months, Mark Reynolds, had left me a detailed plan long ago, one I'd hoped I'd never need. Now, I followed it step by step like a soldier on a mission. The divorce papers were ready to be served. The private investigator had more than enough dirt, surveillance photos, hotel receipts, text message transcripts. Enough to nuke whatever pathetic sympathy play she thought she could pull in court. But I wasn't stopping at divorce. No, she had gambled my trust like it was a casino chip. She deserved worse. I filled out paperwork to have her removed from the health insurance policy at the earliest opportunity. Filed notifications with the credit agencies to protect my score while hers plummeted. Drafted a new will, erasing her from every single place her name had once lived like a parasite on my life. She had chosen another man? Fine. She could live in his shadow. Without me, without my protection, without the life I had built brick by brick while she played dress-up with someone else behind my back. By the time the sun climbed higher into the dirty gray sky, I was finished. I had erased her from my future. The knock on the hotel room door nearly sent me out of my skin. I froze, my heart hammering in my ears, half expecting her to be on the other side, shrieking and clawing like the banshee she had revealed herself to be. But it wasn't her. It was the delivery guy, dropping off a manila envelope I had arranged through my lawyer. Inside, 2 sets of documents. One for me, one for her. The envelope was warm from being carried against someone's chest. It felt heavy in my hands. Heavy like finality. Heavy like freedom. I tossed it on the nightstand without opening it. I needed a shower. I needed to wash the sin of her lies off my skin. The hot water hit me like a hammer, scalding, painful, necessary. I stood there under the spray until my fingers wrinkled and my legs trembled. When I finally stumbled out, dripping and raw, my phone was blinking with notifications. 8 more missed calls. 17 text messages. 2 voicemails. The last text caught my eye. Jack, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Can we please talk? The rage that had been cooling into icy determination flared up again. Didn't mean it? She hadn't meant to tell a waiter she was bringing another man to our anniversary restaurant? I laughed. A sharp, humorless bark that echoed off the cheap wallpaper. No. No more talking. No more apologies. No more second chances. She had made her choice. I was just making sure she lived with it. I set the alarm on my phone. 7:30 a.m., plenty of time to be awake and watching when the first phase of my plan landed like a sledgehammer on her pretty little world. I climbed into the stiff, unfamiliar bed, staring at the stained ceiling tiles. Tonight was the last night she would think she had the upper hand. Tomorrow? Tomorrow was the beginning of the end. The alarm ripped me out of a restless, fractured sleep. I bolted upright, heart pounding, the ghost of a dream slipping through my fingers, something about her standing at our front door, banging, crying, begging. It wasn't real. Not yet. Anyway, I swung my legs out of bed, the carpet scratchy under my feet, and grabbed my phone. 7:30 a.m. Right on schedule. First thing, I refreshed the banking apps. Everything was locked down tighter than a vault. Her debit card? Dead. Credit cards? Declined. Overdraft protection she loved to abuse? Gone. It was almost clinical, the satisfaction of seeing the zeros. Not in the accounts. In her options. I imagined her now, rolling over in bed, reaching for her phone with that lazy entitlement she always had, expecting to see 1,000 notifications from social media, a few shopping emails, maybe a text from her real man. She was so proud to mention last night. Instead, she would find the beginning of her financial freefall. I pulled on yesterday's jeans and shirt, shoved the important documents into my backpack, and left the hotel room without looking back. The plan was already moving, and I had no intention of slowing it down. As I drove, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat like a trapped wasp. New messages from her, each more frantic than the last. Jack, please, where are you? Jack, what's going on? I can't pay for my Uber, WTF. Jack, you're scaring me, call me back. Oh, now she was scared? Good. Let that fear sink deep into her bones. Let it gnaw at her the way her betrayal gnawed at me, slow and merciless. I ignored them all, driving toward a coffee shop downtown where I could sit with a front row seat to the demolition of her world without the suffocating smell of our old life clinging to me. By the time I settled into a corner table, black coffee in hand, it had started. The emails poured in. Bank account alerts. Multiple declined transactions detected. Credit monitoring notices. Significant credit usage attempt flagged. A message from the moving company. On-site at listed address. Awaiting client instructions. Perfect. I fired off a quick text to the moving company. Simple. Final. Proceed. They knew what to do. I sipped my coffee slowly, almost ceremoniously, as I pictured the scene unfolding back home. She would have woken up confused, her spoiled routine disrupted. No quick mobile payments for her morning Starbucks. No easy call to her hairstylist to whine about trivial crap. No gasping selfies to post on her stories. Just locked accounts, no access to funds, and an expensive lifestyle crumbling under the weight of her own greed. And now? A ring at the doorbell. A clipboard shoved into her manicured hand. Official eviction. Movers are here. Pack what you want, ma'am. You've got 3 hours. 3 hours to shove her designer shoes, her ridiculous handbags, her pointless collection of overpriced wellness junk into boxes. 3 hours to look around the house she thought was hers and realize it was never hers at all. I had bought that house. I had furnished it. I had paid for every damn tile, every appliance, every piece of furniture she had bragged about on social media. She contributed nothing but attitude and betrayal. The moving company knew to leave her the essentials, whatever fit in a couple of cheap plastic bins, and stack the rest of her treasures neatly on the front lawn. By the time the sun would be high overhead, every neighbor on our street would know something was up, and she would have to stand there, squirming under their curious, judgmental stares, trying to piece together the shards of her fake little life. The humiliation would be public. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to slash tires or smash windows. This was so much sweeter. Clean. Legal. Inevitable. I watched the morning rush hour traffic pulse by, a blur of strangers going about their lives, oblivious to the small, surgical revenge unfolding just a few miles away. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Jack, I don't understand what's happening. Why would you do this? I love you. Please talk to me. I almost laughed. She loved me? She loved the life I gave her. She loved the security, the comfort, the perks. She loved having a husband when it suited her and being single when it didn't. She loved what I provided. She never loved me. And now, without me, she was nothing but a woman sitting on a front porch next to a pile of boxes, watching her carefully curated world rot in the sun. I finished my coffee, tucked my phone into my pocket, and walked out into the crisp morning air. This wasn't the end. Not even close. Today was just the beginning of the real lesson. She had shown me who she really was. Now, I was going to show her exactly what that cost. I took my time driving past the house. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down enough for her to notice. But I saw everything I needed to see through the passenger side window. There she was, standing barefoot in the driveway, her arms crossed, her mouth twisted into that bratty, furious snarl she usually reserved for waiters who didn't grovel fast enough. Around her, the scene was chaos. Boxes stacked haphazardly on the curb. A pair of movers rolling her precious vanity mirror, the one she insisted was an investment, onto the grass like it was a piece of junk picked up off the side of the highway. A neighbor across the street pretended to water his lawn, though the hose wasn't even turned on. Another one stood in her doorway, phone in hand, recording everything. Perfect. Let the whole world see it. I didn't pity her. Not even for a second. She deserved every scraping, humiliating second of this. She bent down, shouting something at the movers, waving her arms wildly like she could reverse reality with enough tantrum energy. The movers just shrugged, handed her another clipboard to sign, and kept working. I kept driving. No need to get close. No need for dramatic showdowns. This wasn't about noise. This was about destruction. Silent. Ruthless. Permanent. I drove to a small park on the other side of town, one of those places with a man-made lake and benches dotted around like chess pieces. It was quiet. Empty. The kind of place that gave you too much time to think. I needed that time. Because the next step wasn't just about punishing her. It was about severing every single thread that connected us. I pulled out the thick envelope my lawyer had sent, the final paperwork. Divorce documents, drafted and ready. Asset protection orders. Notifications to insurance, retirement accounts, and investment portfolios. All tied up neatly with a bow. All favoring me. Every piece of it triggered by clauses she had once laughed at when she skimmed the prenup, too busy picking napkin colors for our wedding to notice the trapdoor right under her Prada heels. Back then, she thought she didn't need to read the fine print. Back then, she thought she would never lose. Now, she would lose everything. I opened the folder carefully, the papers crisp and heavy. I felt a strange detachment, almost like I was handling the remains of someone I used to know. At the top of the stack was the official letterhead from my lawyer's office. Subject: Notice of divorce and marital dissolution proceedings. No drama. No emotion. Just cold, sharp reality. I scribbled my signature across the bottom line, the ink bleeding slightly on the paper as my hand pressed too hard. There it was. A marriage, ended with a few strokes of a pen. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't her. It was the private investigator. I opened the message. Target spotted leaving residence with male companion. Luggage in hand. Heading toward downtown. I leaned back against the bench, staring at the clouds, and laughed. Of course. She ran to him. The real man she bragged about over dinner. The one she thought would save her from the cold truth closing in around her like a noose. Let him have her. Let him drown in her lies, her demands, her shallow games. He was getting the real her, the version stripped of the designer facade, the one that didn't come with a joint account or an emergency exit when things got messy. I pulled up the moving company app on my phone, checked the status update. Property clear. Locks changed. New security code active. Good. Even if she tried to crawl back, she wouldn't be able to open the front door. Not ever again. The next step was simple. The divorce server was already scheduled to hand-deliver the papers later that afternoon to whatever hotel she thought she could hide in. I had even asked them to include a little note with it. Nothing nasty. Nothing emotional. Just 2 words, written in bold, plain font. You chose. Because that was the truth she could never wiggle away from. She chose this. She chose betrayal. She chose to treat me like an afterthought. And now she would live with that choice tattooed across her life forever. The sun crept higher in the sky, the heat soaking into the back of my neck, but I didn't move. I watched the clouds drift lazily across the blue, feeling lighter with every second that passed. The final phase was set. The money, the house, the future, all mine now. She had spent years treating me like an accessory, something to show off when it suited her, to discard when she wanted something new. Now she was the one being discarded. And the best part? I wasn't even finished yet. I didn't go back to the hotel right away. I wanted to feel the city move around me, the hum of normal life, the steady beat of people rushing to jobs, to meetings, to brunch dates they wouldn't even remember a week from now. I needed that noise, that pulse, to drown out the last lingering scraps of anger still clinging to my ribs like stubborn parasites. The truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused, sharper than I had felt in years. And I was ready for the next strike. As I wandered through the crowd, the sun warming the back of my neck, my phone buzzed again. Another update from the private investigator. 2 photos attached. I stopped dead on the sidewalk, tilting the screen to block the glare. There she was, my wife, or rather, the woman who used to be my wife, dragging 2 overstuffed suitcases into a cheap downtown hotel. Her real man wasn't helping her. He was walking a few paces ahead, texting on his phone, not even glancing back to see if she was keeping up. Typical. She had bet everything on a man who couldn't even be bothered to hold a door open for her. I zoomed in on the photo. Her face was twisted into something bitter and tight, her hair pulled back in a messy, angry knot. No makeup. No performance. For the first time in years, I saw her without the mask. And she looked pathetic. Not a queen fallen from her throne. Not a tragic heroine. Just a woman who thought she was too clever to ever fall, and who now sat dazed among the ruins she had built with her own 2 hands. It should have satisfied me. And it did. A little. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. I texted back the simple confirmation. Proceed with delivery. The server would meet them in the lobby within the hour. I pictured the scene. Her dragging those heavy bags, sweating, humiliated, desperate to check into a room and pretend none of this was happening, and then the server approaching, crisp and professional, handing her the thick stack of papers she would have no choice but to accept. And inside? Everything. The divorce summons. The asset freeze notifications. The health insurance termination letter. The change of beneficiary form for my life insurance policy. All tied up neatly in a cruel little bow. I wandered into a bookstore next, the heavy smell of old paper and wood polish hitting me like a welcome slap. It was cool inside, dim and quiet, and I found myself drifting toward the back, toward the philosophy and law sections I used to love when life was simpler, when life was still real. I picked a random book off the shelf and flipped it open, pretending to read, but really, I was just letting the minutes tick down. 45 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Delivery confirmed. No signature required. The photo attached showed her standing in the middle of the hotel lobby, divorce papers dangling from her hand, her face twisted into pure disbelief. Shock. Confusion. Rage. Like she was the victim here. Like she hadn't brought every last ounce of this crashing down on herself. Behind her, the real man looked annoyed, more like he was babysitting a drunk stranger than comforting a partner. He wasn't touching her. He wasn't holding her. He wasn't even looking at her. Just scrolling his phone, bored out of his mind. I couldn't have scripted it better if I tried. Let her scream. Let her beg. Let her turn on the waterworks she had used to manipulate me for years. It didn't matter anymore. The server's report included one final note. Subject attempted to refuse documents. Witnesses present confirmed delivery. Subject verbally abusive, directed at companion and staff. I smiled. There she was, the real her. The one no Instagram filter could hide. The one no amount of crocodile tears could redeem. I set the phone down on a nearby table and just breathed. It was almost too easy. For years, she had made me feel like I wasn't enough. Not rich enough. Not exciting enough. Not alpha enough. But now, stripped of my resources, my name, my protection, she wasn't even enough for the man she had thrown it all away for. I grabbed the book off the table without even looking at the title and bought it, needing to do something normal, something tangible, something that didn't involve burning memories and salted earth. As I stepped back out into the busy street, the world felt lighter somehow. Brighter. Cleaner. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. There was still one final move to make, one last nail for the coffin she had built with her own hands. And I was going to drive it in so deep she'd feel it every single day for the rest of her miserable life. I didn't head back to the hotel. Not yet. There was still too much to set into motion, and I didn't want to miss a second of it. I drove across town to the place where my next move would be quietly, irrevocably made, my bank's private client office. No fluorescent lights. No waiting behind a sweaty guy cashing his paycheck. Just a quiet, carpeted floor and a heavy oak door with a gold placard that read Private Banking Division. I walked in, was immediately greeted by name, and ushered into a glass-walled room overlooking the city. The account manager, a sharp woman named Grace who had known me for years, already had the paperwork laid out on the table. "Ready?" she asked, her tone crisp, professional, but carrying a slight note of curiosity. She didn't need to know the details, but she knew enough to smell a scorched earth operation when she saw one. Ready, I said simply. I signed transfer forms. I closed joint accounts. I moved my investments under a private trust one had created the week after I first suspected she was cheating, a trust she could never touch, no matter how many tears she squeezed out in a courtroom. And then I handed over the last piece, the instructions to cut her off completely from the house. It was technically mine alone, thanks to the prenup she hadn't cared to read, and the title was being legally shifted into my private trust, sealed away tighter than Fort Knox. Grace processed everything efficiently, with only a few professional, raised eyebrows when she saw just how thorough the documentation was. Every form filed, every loophole closed, every last shred of access she had ever enjoyed, gone, buried under layers of cold, gleaming legality. By the time I walked out of that office an hour later, I was a different man. Freer, sharper, unbreakable. The only thing she could ever take from me again was a memory, and even those were getting burned down one by one. I got into my car, letting the leather seat hug my back as I stared out over the city skyline. It was almost noon, right about the time her world would be officially crumbling beyond repair. The private investigator sent another update. Subject seen arguing with male companion. Companion departed location alone. Subject visibly upset. I laughed, a cold, hollow sound. Of course he left. He hadn't signed up for the real version of her. The one without the credit cards, the luxury car, the perfect makeup, the steady hand-pulling puppet strings behind the scenes. He wanted the illusion. He didn't want the fallout. And now she had no one. No husband. No boyfriend. No money. No home. Just a few bags, a stack of legal documents, and a lifetime of bad choices weighing down her shoulders. I turned on the ignition, feeling the engine rumble to life under me, and headed for the final destination on today's list. My lawyer's office. Not to cry into a coffee cup. Not to wallow. No, today was for something much cleaner, much more satisfying. Today was for revenge, but not the kind she would see coming. Because unlike her, I didn't burn bridges. I built new ones. While she spiraled into chaos, desperate to save the ashes of her crumbling life, I was already planning what came next. The lawyer, Mark Reynolds, the same man who had quietly helped me prepare this nuclear winter, was waiting when I arrived. The receptionist barely had time to announce me before he opened the door himself. "Jack," he said, nodding. "Come on in." His office smelled like leather and ink and quiet victories. We didn't waste time with small talk. He slid a thick packet across the desk to me. Inside, my formal petition to the court. I scanned the cover page, my pulse steady. Petition for exclusive use and possession of marital residence. Petition for waiver of spousal support based on infidelity clause. Petition for reimbursement of marital assets expended on extramarital activities. Mark leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Once we file this," he said, "her life gets a whole lot smaller, a whole lot faster." He didn't have to ask if I was sure. I had never been sure of anything in my life. I signed. Page after page after page. Each signature another chain snapped. Each initial another door slammed in her face. When I finished, Mark gathered everything into a neat stack and smiled, an actual, honest smile, rare for a man whose job usually involved other people's misery. "She's going to try to fight it," he said. "Scream. Threaten. Cry." "I know," I said. "And when she does," he continued, "you don't flinch. You don't argue. You let the paperwork strangle her case before she even gets a foot in the door." I nodded. It was already happening. She just didn't know it yet. As I left the office, the sun was high overhead, the streets bustling, life moving forward. Without her. Without the lies. Without the dead weight I had been dragging behind me for years. But even with all that set in motion, I knew it wasn't enough. Not yet. There was still one piece left. One place she still thought she had safety. A secret she thought I didn't know about. And by the time I was finished there, she wouldn't even have that. The final, most brutal blow was coming. And this time, there would be no warning. No lifeline. No way out. Just the cold, hard truth, and a reckoning she would never escape. The secret was buried deep. Deeper than she ever thought I'd dig. Deeper than she ever thought I'd dare to look. Because in her mind, I was still that naive, bumbling husband, too nice, too soft, to ever see her dirt, let alone drag it into the light. She had no idea the lengths I had gone to once the first cracks appeared. No idea the private investigator she thought she outsmarted wasn't the only set of eyes I had working. And now it was time to finally use what I'd uncovered. I steered the car onto the highway, the city peeling away behind me as strip malls and office parks gave way to wide fields and broken fences. The address was burned into my memory, etched there during one of the worst nights of my life. 7 months ago, long before the anniversary dinner, I had woken up in the middle of the night and found her gone. No note, no text, just an empty bed and a sinking gut feeling that hadn't left since. Back then, I had convinced myself it was stress, that she needed space, that maybe, somehow, it was my fault for not seeing how unhappy she was. What an idiot. What she was really doing was laying the groundwork for her escape hatch, a backup plan, in case the sugar train ever stopped running. A secret storage unit, leased under a fake maiden name, paid for with a hidden credit card I never knew existed until the investigator pulled her financial records apart piece by rotten piece. I turned onto a cracked service road and found it easily enough. A faded sign reading "Safe Keep Self-Storage." Half the bulbs burned out. The office was closed, but I didn't need anyone's permission. I had the unit number. I had the bolt cutters. And most importantly, I had the righteous fury of a man who had finally stopped lying to himself. I parked behind the building, far from the security cameras, and popped the trunk. The bolt cutters gleamed in the afternoon sun, heavy and cold in my hands. I walked past rows of rusting garage doors until I found it. Unit 117. Her kingdom of secrets. The lock was thick, but cheap. One good squeeze of the cutters, and it snapped like a twig, clattering to the asphalt at my feet. I yanked the door up, half expecting to find nothing. But it was all there. The second life she had been building behind my back. Designer clothes, tags still attached, bought with money she swore we didn't have. Suitcases packed and ready, like she was always planning to run the second a better deal came along. Boxes labeled with destinations: New York, Miami, LA. Photos, too. Printed ones. Not of me, not of us. Of her and the real man. Smirking at beaches, cozy at hotels, their arms wrapped around each other like a bad soap opera romance. And tucked between all that garbage, shoved into a cracked plastic bin, were the real prizes. Bank statements, receipts, documents showing accounts she had opened without my knowledge, some in her name, some under fake LLCs she thought would stay hidden. Every lie, every betrayal, every stolen dollar was right here. And she thought it was safe. I didn't touch anything yet. I just stood there for a long moment, breathing it all in. This wasn't just infidelity. It wasn't just disrespect. It was robbery. It was treason against a man who had loved her so much he would have given her the world if she had just asked. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos. Hundreds of them. Every document. Every receipt. Every damning piece of evidence. It was tedious, methodical work, and it filled me with a satisfaction so pure it almost scared me. Because when the final showdown came, when she tried to paint herself as the poor, abandoned wife, I wouldn't need to raise my voice. I wouldn't need to argue. I would just lay out the facts, the cold, brutal truth, and the court would do the rest. I finished documenting everything and shoved the door back down, leaving the broken lock hanging there like a warning. She would come back eventually. She would find the lock snapped, the door gaping, the secret life she thought was hidden exposed and vulnerable. And she would know. He knows everything now. I drove away without looking back. The images burned into my mind, into my phone, into the evidence files already being uploaded to my lawyer's secured cloud server. As I merged back onto the highway, my phone buzzed on the seat beside me. Another message. This one from her. The desperation had deepened into something ugly, raw. "Jack, I'm begging you, please come back. We can fix this, please. Just come home, please. I love you. I need you." Pathetic. There was no home anymore. She had torched it the moment she decided I wasn't enough. And there was no fixing this. Not when she had spent months plotting an exit from a life she thought was beneath her. No. The only thing left to do was finish what I had started. And by the time I was done, she wouldn't just lose me. She would lose every lie she had ever used to prop herself up. Every fake smile, every secret bank account, every stolen dollar, stripped away until there was nothing left but the cold, empty truth. And the long, brutal fall she could never blame on anyone but herself. I didn't drive straight back to the hotel. I needed a minute. No, I needed a victory lap. I circled the block, feeling the hum of the engine under my hands. The city stretched out in front of me like a chessboard I had already won. She was still scrambling, still thinking she had moves left, still thinking she could cry, plead, seduce her way back into the life she had murdered with her own 2 hands. But I wasn't the same man she left at that anniversary dinner table. The man she had counted on to be weak. He was dead and buried in that parking lot where I had walked away without a word. Now she was dealing with the man she had created through her own betrayal. A man who was 3 steps ahead, who didn't need to scream or punch walls to destroy her. Just cold, quiet, relentless strategy. As the afternoon wore on, I found a small cafe tucked away from the main streets, parked myself at a back table, and set up my laptop. It was time to tip the first real domino. I logged into my secured drive and attached the damning photos from the storage unit. Every account, every hidden dollar, every trip she thought I'd never know about. Then I composed an email to her lawyer, the poor sap she had scrounged up in a panic after realizing I wasn't bluffing. Subject: disclosure of marital misconduct and financial malfeasance. Attachments: 257 items. Brief: professional, lethal. I didn't CC her. Let her find out the hard way. When her lawyer opened it, realized the ticking bomb in his hands, and had to call her with the bad news. When you operate in darkness for so long, you forget how brutal daylight feels. I clicked send. There. The truth was out. Irrefutable. Unstoppable. Her negotiating power, the threats she had started slinging through text about taking half and renting me in court, gone. Nuked from orbit. Now, she wasn't fighting for half. She was fighting to walk away with anything at all. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the burn of the cheap coffee on my tongue, and smiled. It was almost beautiful, the precision of it. Everything she thought she was going to weaponize against me. Alimony, sympathy, a sob story about an abusive husband, was now a double-edged blade, and she was bleeding out on it. My phone buzzed again. It was Mark, my lawyer. Short and to the point. Received. Proceeding as planned. Expecting initial settlement collapse within 24 hours. Collapse. Perfect word for it. She had spent years building this house of cards, layer by layer. Lies, secrets, manipulations, little half-truths wrapped in sweet smiles. And now the whole thing was catching fire. The smoke visible from every corner of her tiny, crumbling empire. I stood, leaving a few bills on the table, and headed out into the street. The sky was heavy with the promise of a storm, clouds rolling in, dark and thick and full of rage. Good. It fit the mood, because now it was time to finish what I started. I drove across town again, not to the hotel, not to any place she would think to look for me, but to the quiet office of another specialist, a forensic accountant who owed my lawyer a favor. She welcomed me in with a brisk handshake and a gleam in her eye. "You have the files?" she asked. I handed her a flash drive without a word. She slid it into her laptop, her fingers tapping like machine gun fire as she opened folders, scanned documents, cross-referenced bank names and tax IDs. Within minutes, she nodded, satisfaction flashing across her face. "This is good," she said. "Real good. Give me a few days, and I'll have a full trace on where every penny went. Offshore accounts, fake businesses, unreported income. Whatever she thought she hid. I'll find it. Take your time," I said, voice low, steady. Because the beauty of it wasn't just in proving she lied. It was in proving she had committed fraud. Marital fraud. Financial fraud. Enough to not just deny her a single cent from me, but potentially land her in court facing charges she couldn't smile her way out of. And once we had that, any judge she cried to would see her not as a victim, but as a criminal. No sympathy. No settlement. No safety net. Just the hard, merciless ground rushing up to meet her. I left the office with a fresh burn of energy in my chest. The world she thought she had so cleverly built was already cracking. By the time this was over, there wouldn't even be dust left. The streetlights flickered on as I drove back toward the hotel, my phone vibrating nonstop in the passenger seat. Texts, calls, voicemails, all from her. Please, Jack, just talk to me. I didn't mean it. It was a mistake. We can fix this. Please, please don't do this. Begging, whining, desperate. She still didn't understand. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was justice. By the time she realized that, by the time she understood that there was no one left to lie to, no mask left to hide behind, it would be far too late. Because the worst part wasn't what I had already done. The worst part was what was coming next. The final blow. The one she'd never recover from. The rain started just as I pulled into the hotel parking lot. Not a soft, cleansing rain. A hard, punishing downpour that hammered the roof of my car and blurred the world into streaks of gray and black. I killed the engine but didn't move, staring out at the storm like it was a mirror to the wreckage I had left in my wake. Somewhere across town, she was sitting in a hotel room surrounded by the smoldering ruins of her life, still frantically trying to patch together the pieces she had smashed with her own greedy hands. And she thought that was the worst of it. She still had no idea, because I had saved the most brutal blow for last, the one thing she never thought she could lose. Her reputation. It had been her real prize all along, hadn't it? Not the house, not the cars, not the jewelry or the designer vacations. It was the image she had curated like a masterpiece. The loving wife, the glamorous socialite, the woman everyone envied and admired. That image had protected her, had given her the power to manipulate, to lie, to cheat without consequence. And now it was going to be turned against her in a way so public, so devastating, that no amount of crocodile tears could ever put it back together. I pulled out my laptop, tethered it to my phone's hotspot, and opened a secure browser. The private investigator's final report sat there, glowing on the screen. Every affair, every fake business account, every offshore transaction, every photo, every damning, humiliating detail. Organized, time-stamped, verified. I copied the report into a fresh file, stripping it of legalese, sharpening it into a simple, brutal narrative. The truth laid bare. Then I opened a new email. Not to her, not to her lawyer, to everyone else. I started with the community mailing list, neighbors, church groups, country club members. The people she preened for, the ones she paraded her fake, perfect life in front of every chance she got. Then came the business contacts, the charity board she sat on, the friends she kept in her orbit with smiles and lies. Local blogs, small-town gossip websites. Hell, I even threw in a few reporters who loved a juicy, high-society scandal. Subject line: the truth behind her full name. What you didn't know. Attachments. Photos. Documents. Proof. I didn't add a message. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. I hit send. And just like that, it was done. There was no calling it back. No spinning it. No burying it under fake smiles and tearful apologies. By tomorrow morning, the story of her downfall would be the only thing anyone could talk about. Her real man, wherever he was now, would see it. The neighbors she had lied to would see it. The friends she thought were loyal would turn their backs so fast she'd choke on the dust. And her parents? Oh, especially them. The ones who had always thought she could do no wrong, who blamed me for every tiny crack in our marriage. They'd see it too. The truth she could never hide from again. I closed the laptop, leaned back in the car seat, and let the storm roar around me. For the first time in years, I felt no anger, no sadness, no regret, just peace. Cold, clean, final peace. The kind you only find after you've burned every bridge that ever led back to the chains that once held you down. My phone buzzed again. Not her this time. Mark, my lawyer. Heads up, her attorney just reached out. They're desperate to settle. No claims, no property, no alimony. Just a clean break if you'll stop the bleeding. I stared at the message for a long time, the rain pounding harder against the windshield. Desperate. Good. Let her be desperate. Let her understand, down to the marrow of her bones, that this was never about winning. This was about ending her ability to ever hurt me or anyone else again. I typed out my response carefully, savoring every word. No settlement. File everything. drag it into the sunlight. Because sometimes mercy is just another form of weakness. And she had taught me better than that. The storm outside raged on, but inside, I was a fortress. Unshakable, untouchable. She had taken everything good from our life together and set it on fire. Now, all she had left were ashes. Ashes and a name that would follow her like a curse everywhere she went. And I wasn't even finished yet. Tomorrow, the final hammer would fall, and she would finally understand what it meant to truly lose everything. The next morning, the storm was gone, but the wreckage it left behind? Still very much there. The sky was washed out and pale, the streets still slick with rain. But the real flood, the one I had unleashed, was just beginning to drown her. I woke up early, pulled a stiff shirt over my back, and sat by the window of my hotel room, sipping black coffee while the world started turning against her. One notification after another rolled across my phone screen like a silent drumbeat. Her name, removed from local charity board. Country club revokes membership pending investigation. Influencer sponsorship deals canceled. She had spent years building her identity on appearances, smiling for every camera, posing for every event, shaking hands, making all the right noises. And now it was collapsing around her like a house of cards caught in a hurricane. The evidence I had dropped wasn't just damning. It was radioactive. Nobody wanted to be associated with a liar, a cheater, a fraud. Her social media had gone dark overnight, comments flooding her last posts, people she once lorded over now feasting on her downfall like vultures. I imagined her hunched over her phone in whatever dingy hotel room she had ended up in, watching the life she treasured slip through her fingers one notification at a time. But I wasn't done yet, because today she had to face me. In court, I buttoned my jacket slowly, feeling the weight of the day settle across my shoulders, not as a burden, but as armor. Today wasn't about screaming. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about closure. Real, brutal, final closure. I arrived at the courthouse early, stepping through the metal detectors and cold marble halls like a man walking into his own rebirth. Mark was already there, standing by the benches, calm and collected. "She's here," he said simply. I followed his gaze across the hallway and saw her, or what was left of her. She looked nothing like the woman I had married. Gone was the perfectly styled hair, the smug smile, the designer clothes. She looked small, broken, like someone who had finally realized that no one was coming to save her. She clutched a cheap handbag like it was a life raft, her eyes red-rimmed, her skin blotchy with panic. For a fleeting second, a ghost of pity stirred somewhere deep inside me, but it died quickly. She hadn't hesitated when she threw me away for someone shinier, richer, newer. She hadn't hesitated to lie, to steal, to build a second life behind my back. She had made her choices. Now she was living with them. Our hearing wasn't long. Mark had made sure of that. He presented the evidence methodically, cleanly, slicing through any narrative she tried to stammer out. Every secret bank account, every falsified tax document, every text and photo of her new life being funded with money she had siphoned from ours. Her lawyer tried to argue, tried to spin it, but it was hopeless. Every time he opened his mouth, Mark crushed him with another cold, irrefutable fact. The judge barely looked at her. By the end of the session, the ruling was clear. She would receive nothing. No alimony. No share of the house. No claim to my retirement funds. And full responsibility for her own debts, including the ones she had racked up behind my back. In fact, if she didn't come up with a settlement for the damages she caused to our joint credit accounts, the judge hinted she might be facing a second, even uglier round, this time for fraud. The gavel hit the wood like a gunshot, and just like that, it was over. 13 years together. Reduced to a signed document, a public humiliation, a name she would never be able to scrub clean. As the courtroom emptied, she approached me. Her steps slow. Her body trembling. Her voice barely a whisper. "Jack," she rasped, tears threatening. "Please, please, can we just talk for a second?" I looked at her. Really looked. At the hollowed-out wreck of a woman who thought she could have it all, loyalty, luxury, love, and spit on it like it meant nothing. And I realized. There was nothing left to say. I didn't owe her forgiveness. I didn't owe her understanding. I owed her nothing. I simply turned, adjusted the cuffs of my jacket, and walked away without a word. Her choked sob followed me down the hallway. but it couldn't touch me anymore. She had gambled everything and lost. Not because I was cruel, not because I was vengeful, but because she forgot the oldest truth in the book. When you break something precious, you don't get to cry when it cuts you back. I stepped into the bright afternoon sun, the world stretching out in front of me wide and free. But I knew it wasn't fully over yet. There was still one last thing I needed to do, one final nail to hammer in, before I could truly walk away without ever looking back. I didn't drive away from the courthouse. Not yet. There was still one final task, one last, irreversible cut to make sure she could never crawl back, never weave another lie, never poison my life again. I walked slowly down the street, my shoes crunching against the broken sidewalk as the courthouse shrank behind me. The sun was too bright, the air too clean. It didn't match the chaos still smoldering behind those marble walls. I made my way to a small office tucked between a pawnshop and a closed-down diner. No sign on the door, just a name etched onto the glass. Evergreen Data Recovery. Inside, a man about my age sat behind a battered desk, thumbing through a thick technical manual. When he saw me, he stood and extended a hand. "Jack, right? Got your message. You bring the device." I pulled my old backup drive from my bag and placed it on the counter. It looked harmless enough, just a little black box. But inside it, years of memories. Photos, videos, letters, plans, dreams we had built together. And now, every pixel of it felt like a landmine buried under my ribs. The technician flipped it over in his hands, nodding. "You sure about this?" he asked, giving me one last out. I didn't hesitate. "Erase it," I said. "Wipe it down to the bare bones. No recovery. Nothing left." He gave a short, understanding nod. Sometimes, destruction wasn't about anger. It was about survival. I watched him plug it into a small machine, a screen lighting up with lines of code racing by faster than my eye could follow. I wasn't just erasing photos or documents. I was erasing her. Every fake smile, every lying embrace, every whispered, "I love you," that had curdled into betrayal the second I turned my back. I didn't need souvenirs of a life that had never been real. And when the machine beeped a final confirmation, erase complete, I felt something crack loose inside me. Something heavy. Something that had kept me shackled for far, far too long. I left the office lighter than when I had entered, the broken drive left behind on the technician's counter like a relic from a world I no longer belonged to. The drive wasn't the only thing I left behind that day. I left behind the man who begged for answers. I left behind the man who second-guessed every word, every look, every silence. I left behind the man who believed love was supposed to survive anything, even a betrayal that gutted you while you were busy planning anniversary dinners. Outside, the city felt different. Sharper, clearer, more honest. I slid behind the wheel of my car, turned the key, and let the engine rumble to life. No destination, no plans, just forward. The phone buzzed once on the passenger seat, a final text from a number I had already deleted from my contacts. I didn't need to read it. I didn't need to hear the excuses, the blame, the pleas. I already knew the script by heart. Instead, I picked up the phone, opened the settings, and factory reset it. Contacts, messages, apps, all wiped away clean like chalk from a board. A fresh start. No echoes of the past. As the screen went black, I tossed it onto the back seat and pulled onto the open road. The hotel, the courthouse, the ruined life she had tried to drag me into. They disappeared in the rearview mirror, getting smaller and smaller until they were nothing but dust on the horizon. And ahead? Ahead was the life she could never touch again. Mine. Untamed. Unburdened. Unbroken. Somewhere back in that crumbling city, she was probably still trying to piece together what had happened, how the world had flipped against her so fast, how the man she thought would never stand up finally walked away without looking back. She would spend years trying to rewrite the story, trying to paint herself as the victim, trying to find someone new to carry the weight of her lies. But it wouldn't matter, because the only thing she would ever find now was the wreckage she made with her own two hands. And me? I wouldn't even hear about it. I had crossed the finish line. Free. Whole. Alive. The chapter closed not with a bang, not with a scream, but with the quiet hum of a car rolling forward into the unknown. And for the first time in far too long, the unknown didn't scare me. It thrilled me.